The way I kind of think about these tools is like it is like 100x leverage or like 1000x leverage, that things that used to be hard are not hard anymore.
More and more designers are in code, and also because the velocity of engineering has sped up so much, like more and more engineers are also designing.
Design, taste, and direction still matters just as much as it did before. But now what we don't have to do is spend our time kind of moving the layers around and implementing slots and props inside of Figma. We can ask agents to help us do that.
If you're a designer and you built out a design, with some of these new MCPs, you can literally just do a one prompt turn and your full design can appear in the product.
I think going forward, it doesn't matter what role you have in business. Like this really can affect almost anything that you do. Like these tools allow you to do things that were never possible before.
Design in a way can feel like the bottleneck, but there's a lot of kind of actual slow thoughtfulness that needs to go in. So I think the real challenge for designers at the moment is choosing when to go slow.
Hey, this is Carlos, CEO at Product School, and your host on the Product Podcast. Today's guests are Ed Bays, design lead at OpenAI, and Matt Colyer, product director at Figma. OpenAI and Figma just announced a new integration that creates a true round-trip workflow between Codex and Figma. Product builders can now start a design in code on Codex and then iterate it on Figma's design canvas. Similarly, it's also possible to start a design on Figma and then push it to Codex in order to generate the code. Regardless of where you start, the main benefits are faster iteration and a cleaner handoff between what you design and ship. In this episode, Matt walks us through a step-by-step demo. Let's get into it.
Hey everyone. Today I have two guests. This is probably the first time I'm hosting two cool people at the same time, two builders. I have Ed Bays from OpenAI and Matt Colyer from Figma. So maybe I'm going to mention the first person in order to do the intros, right? Ed, welcome to the Product Podcast.
Thanks.
Tell us a little bit more about what you're up to at OpenAI, please.
Yeah, so I'm on the design team here and work on Codex, our suite of coding products. And I've been at OpenAI for about 18 months, always worked on kind of research and coding products. So yeah, excited to chat to you today.
So I think you are also the first designer on the Product Podcast, even though, as you know, all the lines are blurring. So I consider you all builders. Matt, what about you?
Yeah. So my name is Matt. I just joined the product team at Figma in January and have worked with several teams here. And the first one was Code to Canvas. And then just yesterday, we had a kind of our second follow-up launch of Write to Figma. So pretty excited. It's kind of in the space of like AI in development and then design and how it all goes together.
Awesome. And that's the key reason why I wanted you guys together, so we can actually demo this new launch and how now it's easier than ever for any kind of builder to go from code to design and vice versa. I think in previous conversations, you call this the round trip workflow.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe, Matt, we can start with you. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this is all about?
Yeah, I mean, I think as I'm sure as you've seen, Carlos, like the world is changing, right? Like AI is like unlocked this incredible capability that we didn't have before for builders and for just everyone else. Like I think it's really democratized who can create software and really expanded who does design. I'd love to hear Ed's take on this, but like my personal take is like, I think we now have a lot more people who are doing design who might not even be realizing about it. And that's a really exciting time for me. I don't know, Ed, what's your take?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like, for a while, these individual roles have been kind of collapsing a little bit, or these kind of historic like silos have been kind of breaking down. And, more and more designers are in code. And also because the velocity of engineering has kind of sped up so much, like more and more engineers are also designing, right? Designing in prod, building new components. So the kind of, the old way of working was perhaps kind of like these two different groups. The designers work in their tools, and then they kind of hand it off to the engineering, and engineer kind of finishes things in their stack of tools. And now I think what you're seeing is this hybrid. So engineers are jumping into Figma and doing more work there, and iterating on design systems and tweaking the kind of the underlying design system there. And then designers are also hopping in code more, so they might be jumping into that last mile polish. So really like up leveling the craft and making the fidelity between the initial design and the final, final product kind of one thing, or maybe even earlier in the design process, hopping in and prototyping more in code themselves. So maybe testing out interaction design and the like. So it's less that kind of everyone is moving to code, and it's more that kind of engineers are coming into design, designers are going into engineering, and the tools are all kind of like becoming way more flexible and interoperable. And yeah, that's why I'm super excited about some of these recent launches from Figma, because it's no longer this kind of like linear process from kind of one directional process from design to code. Now it goes back and forth, so you can update design system files from for production, and you can move designs into production from Figma. So yeah, super excited to dig into this today.
I want to unpack both workflows. Yeah, so it's crystal clear. And I know after that we're going to do an actual demo. Because you're right, Ed, traditionally, like if a designer starts designing, they would go to Figma. And the handoff to engineering is like, okay, here's the design. Good luck. And the reality is that the implementation is never 100% as expected, and vice versa. So maybe we can start with that initial workflow, Matt. So for the people who start with a design on Figma, how is this new workflow different now?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about it. So I think one of the things we've been really pushing on is like, how do we enable agents to leverage the tooling inside of Figma? So for companies and individuals who've invested in design libraries inside of Figma, like they've got representations that they use to like prototype and that they kind of explore ideas. And I think that's really where the value of Figma is like, and continues to be, is like this ability to riff quickly, right? And with other folks at the same time. And so what we're now bringing to it is the ability to use agents using that same set of tooling. So with the right to Figma capability, we allow agents to use the plugin API just like we have plugins inside of Figma. And that really just unlocked a whole new set of capabilities. And so to give an example is like previously designers who worked in design systems would spend a fair bit of their time taking a design library that's been drawn and like updating it with the latest like changes in code, right? That they're like, say they have a drop down, but they want to add the ability to multi-select to the component that's in their design library, right? Like this is like something they're going to extend an existing component. So they would have to go through and kind of add those states and then go ahead and go back to code and then re-implement the states there. And so like this is like the design translation process, which Ed, he's shaking his head. I'm sure he's lived this pain many times. All of us in the industry have. It's not a fun process because at the end of the day, you're trying to deliver value to customers. That you're like, hey, I actually just want to build this new sign-up flow that requires this multi-select dropdown. The interesting part of the work is not necessarily like adding all those different states to it. And so I think that's the opportunity here, is that like with agents, we have this immensely leveraged tool. Design, taste, and direction still matters just as much as it did before. But now what we don't have to do is spend our time kind of moving the layers around and implementing slots and props inside of Figma. We can ask agents to help us do that.
So how do you ensure that the handoff is actually correct, and what you are designing on one visual interface is going to be accurately implemented on code?
So, I mean, I think that's where that was true back in the design translation process pre-agents. The lots of designers and engineers would like pull up chairs next to each other and sit in front of one monitor. And then like the engineer had implemented the multi-selects, but then in a certain case, like the mouse would hover and then like the menu would disappear. And they're like, well, that interaction is not quite right. Right. So like that work still needs to be done. Verification is still an important part of the process. Um, Agents continue to improve, and as they get better, like these tools get better, and like so they can do some of that themselves. Like you can hook it up with some open source tooling that allows you to kind of drive a browser and like take a screenshot. But I will say it is not a substitute for human judgment.
Got it. I mean, Ed, from your perspective as the designer in the room, like what is your experience on how this new integration is helping you make sure that when you hand off a design, you are still going to be satisfied with the actual code implementation?
Yeah, totally. So I think it's all about kind of like how close the designer can get to the final product. So there was always this like lossy translation product where you'd spec things out, it'd be pixel perfect, right? You'd have your perfect design system, then you hand it off, and then the engineer has to kind of hop into the file, click into developer mode, figure out the exact pixel, padding or width, or what's the different the underlying CSS behind say like a shadow, and it's all like pretty complex, and there's a lot of areas where that lossiness can appear, or there can be deviations. But and a lot of the work, to kind of Matt's point, was this messy kind of translation piece. And basically with some of these new tools, they just kind of go away. So if you think about the kind of the old world and the new world, the new world is kind of designers and engineers have this like broader range of tools, and they can all speak to each other and work like super fluidly across them. So we all work in agents. I don't know if you do in your kind of podcast prep, Carlos, but like one of the new tools for all of us is like, it could be ChatGPT, it could be Codex. Like you're kind of in this agent every day, and the basically the kind of TLDR in these new tools is it's basically new plumbing that kind of plumbs up these different tools and surfaces together. So a lot of your time is not spent on these things that might have taken a long time and like not be the most exciting part, like frankly, of some of like the designer's job. But if we can kind of remove that, then we can free up time to think at a high level about the big picture stuff, right? So it could be like the super amazing interaction, or it could be this like really kind of smooth new system, and it's really about kind of like helping automate some of that kind of low level work so that you can focus on the kind of high level primitives.
We talked about the handoff as an important challenge, and how now that is becoming possible. It is possible to go from design to code implementation in a much more accurate way. But I want to talk about the reverse, because the interfaces are also an important challenge, especially for non-technical people. Like, non-technical people are comfortable on a document, on a canvas, but like just sending them to a CLI, right? It's just not their human nature. So for you, even as a designer, I mean, you're kind of biased because you're already working at OpenAI, but still, like, how does that work for a non-technical person to open a terminal and get comfortable enough to use code in order to design?
It's a really good question. So I think, first off, I think where we kind of started with Codex and where a lot of these tools started was we're building tools for developers. And if you build a tool for a developer, it does look a little bit different to a consumer tool, right? Maybe it lives in your CLI, maybe even if it lives in an app, there is a bunch of different stuff in the interface that to a non-developer might feel intimidating or scary. So, first off, we are building for developers. But I think that the very cool thing that has happened with a lot of this, and you can kind of see it in the information architecture of some of these products, is that we've moved from this like side chat on the right. So we have an IDE extension in Codex, as well as a CLI product. So we do have like GUI versions of these products, which are a little bit more accessible. But we've gone from this like side chat on the right to kind of basically moving chat to the left. And I think like the focus there becomes, the primary focus is actually the conversation. And it turns out that kind of anyone can have a conversation, right? Maybe you render some things in there that are a little bit technical. Maybe there are some terminal outputs. Maybe there are some, files editing, but it's just a conversation. And I think like that is super accessible to anyone. So we do have these CLI products, and I think this is what Matt's going to demo, but we also released a Codex app a few months ago, which is a standalone desktop app, both on Windows, both on Mac and Windows. And if you open it up, I think like, even if you're not a developer, if you kind of can squint your eyes, it's not as kind of scary, I think, as some of these kind of traditional developer products for folks who aren't traditional developers, right? It's kind of has a familiar chat box, you can just ask a question. But also under the hood, it's like super powerful and it can do things for you. So, if you connect, say, like a plugin, which we're releasing this week, say you connect the Figma plugin, it can now work with your Figma. If you connect your, email plugin, it can now, read your emails and help you draft responses, can connect to Slack. So I think as we kind of, move up the level of abstraction and kind of build these interfaces, which are kind of more universal interfaces for getting work done, I think a lot of the scariness of kind of the code for non-developers kind of goes away, because you can kind of scale up and down that complexity, and if you open up these products on first look, it's basically not as scary as a CLI.
Speaking from experience, I'm a former engineer. I cannot claim to be an engineer anymore, but I'm now using the terminal again, which is crazy. Many years later, I'm back at it. And I think one of the things that helped me was that I just make an instruction and it works, right? I could just say connect to, in this case, Figma MCP. Boom, connection made. I just introduce my login, don't have to think about it again. And I think now also with the skills, like codifying a set of instructions and even importing skills that are not even created by me, help me suddenly have those superpowers, ensure that I'm working within certain guidelines, guardrails, however you want to call it, and just focus on getting stuff done. So Matt, maybe from your experience, you can tell me more about how you're making those type of MCP connectors and skills just to kind of increase the level of adoption for non-technical folks.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one of the things, I'm going to digress here for a minute, but circle back to the MCP tools is like, I think for the longest time in this information technology revolution, we humans worked like computers. Like if you look back like 60, 70 years ago, it was like punch cards, which were very inhumane. It was like binary. Then we got to the point of programming languages, which was like a little more human. It was like kind of like a language, but not really. And I think what's really cool about skills and multimodal models in general is like you can have a conversation with them, like legitimately have a conversation, like with voice, right? And like that always seems kind of like sci-fi, right? That it was like Star Trek and you talk to the computer and the computer would answer, but it's like we can all do that with the phones in our pockets now. Um, and so to me, skills, kind of circling back here, like are a natural extension of that is like I read them all the time, right? And it's like I think what's so powerful about them is that it's accessible. Like if you can speak or write, you can use a skill. And so like that's actually one of the critical parts of how we designed this product, right to Figma, is that we exposed kind of the low-lying underneath API and made sure that the model had access to all of the important bits of information to use the API correctly. But then we also shipped it with these like what we're calling foundational skills, which kind of give it the pattern. So think of skills as like recipes, right? That it's like we provided all the ingredients, which are the complicated part, and that's hard to do, and you need to be an engineer. But I would argue that anybody within the Figma community or the larger community in the world can totally write a skill, because it's about taking that domain knowledge and expertise that the community has, like knowing when they're building a design system that it's like, oh, well, like when I build a component, I want to make sure that I use tokens so that in the future I can be able to design with like a light mode and a dark mode, right? And that's knowledge and expertise that people from the design profession have that like maybe somebody who's like a lay person doesn't. Like their first pass at that skill might be like, make me a button, right? But like not think about the cases where it's like, oh, well, this button's going to wind up on a phone or on the web and like how should it look differently? Um, so yeah, so we've built foundational skills. And then one of the other really exciting parts we've done is build kind of community skills. And I know Ed and Codex team have been great partners on this. Like they've got a plugin marketplace. We're in there too. And so like I think in general, the world is building towards these composable Lego blocks, if you will, of skills. And so it's kind of an exciting time to be kind of like a design developer. Like we talked about that theme earlier of democratization, that the next billion software developers, like now you can code using language, right? And I think there's just so much good ideas can come from anywhere, right? And the more people that we have using these tools, the better ideas we're all going to have.
Yeah, well, I think we are ready for
So,
action.
okay,
Let's
we'll
have
do a live demo with the caveat that this is live and agents do different things sometimes. So we'll see how this goes. So here's how Rate to Figma works. I've got the Figma canvas open up here. I'm calling it the badge component. I've got Codex up here on the left, and I've loaded it with the skills that we just talked about from the Codex repo. So these are all the ones that are included now. And then for example purposes, I've actually pulled in Daisy UI, which is an open source framework that implements a button component in React. So we're going to go ahead and use that. And I've got this prompt here. I'm going to send it off. It's asking use Figma tool to draw the badge component in this Figma file and use proper variables and structure with good layer composition so that I can manipulate the design. So the first thing it does here is reads in the skill like we just showed. And then it's going to create a plan. And before doing so, it checks the documentation for how the Figma API works. So we're going to go ahead and allow this for the session. First thing it's going to do is take a screenshot of the canvas and see if there's anything there. So it realizes it's empty, which is what we expect. Then it's going to go ahead and read the source code for that badge component. And it's looking for Python. It's going to try again. Now it's going to look for variables and how they work within the Figma API. Now it's going to go ahead and add the token collection and the variables, and then follow up with the actual component. So it's written the script here. and it's going to go ahead and connect to the file and add those variables. Okay, it's got all the variable collections in place. Okay, so it's going to go ahead and draw the elements now. And here they are on the canvas. It's going to take a screenshot and confirm that it matches what it expects. And it finished.
That is a really good example on workflow going in one direction. I love to talk about the reverse commute, how you call this, the round trip workflow. So if I were to start on the other side of the spectrum, how would this work?
Yeah, so I think the opposite version of this is that instead of going from code, where you've got a component already defined and you want to bring it into design library, you say that you've been working with your coworkers in a Figma canvas, and you've decided on this like new sign up flow for your dog walking app. You could take one of the frames, say like you have your initial frame and you're changing like the order of the fields in it, right? And so you can go with Codex and pull up your local dog fooding app repository, start Codex in there, and then it's able to see like the implementation of the current signup page. And then you can ask it, like using the Figma URL that we kind of just showed, the new frame that you'd like to pull in. And you can ask it to go ahead and like make the changes to that existing signup flow. That is like, okay, can you make the changes that I've kind of specified here? And what it does behind the scenes is it goes into Figma and it pulls a screenshot of it, of like what it should look like. And then the model is able to like compare that to the screenshot if you've set it up locally of like what the current page looks like. But it also has access to what we have a code representation. So some of the tooling that we've built at Figma is that we can take our design canvas and present it as code. And then the job of the Codex agent is to take both screenshots, the before, the after, as well as the code and make the change. And so it kind of works through its tools and then does that.
Super curious to know now in your own product teams or product trios with design and engineering, how is this new workflow improving your own velocity and other business outcomes, right? Like super clear, there's a new way of working. You're already living in that future, if you will, although you're in the present. So what does that really mean for a business now in terms of headcount, velocity, and other type of expectations? We can start with you, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it basically just helps teams work faster, right? So, if you're a designer and you built out a design, with some of these new MCPs, you can literally just do a one-click, one prompt turn, and your full design can appear in the product. So, what might have taken perhaps a few hours to a day previously, happens like pretty fast. So, I think it just speeds up team velocity. It means that teams can work on more stuff. It means that the handoff is like way quicker. But interestingly, it also means that kind of like design in a way it can feel like the bottleneck now, right? Like, so, maybe engineering might have been accelerated, say 10x by coding agents, and designers have also been accelerated, but there's a lot of kind of actual kind of slow thoughtfulness that needs to go into designing a product and thinking about a product and speccing things out and designing systems. So I think the real challenge for designers at the moment is choosing when to go slow. So when to take more thought and consideration around what to build, when you can kind of build anything, what's the right thing to build. And then, as I say, designers can kind of hop into the code base themselves and they can kind of take things across the line at the end. If, for example, just some practical examples across our team, we have folks working on content design. So, people who mainly do writing, so UX copy in the product, they're submitting PRs. I was chatting to someone the other day who's like a real kind of like, aficionado of Codex. She's been submitting PRs in the kind of ChatGPT code base to improve, UX copy across the code base. So I think at both ends of the spectrum, it kind of speeds folks up. But the main thing is just being able to build more faster. And then the challenge becomes deciding what to build.
Love to.
So for you as a non-technical person, like how much coding skills or other type of technical skills did you have to learn in order to feel comfortable in this new workflow?
Yeah, I mean, my background's kind of actually half and half design and engineering, so maybe I'm slightly different in that perspective, in that respect. But Another really powerful thing and underrated thing I think about these tools is they're really like a tutor. So everyone has access to this tutor who's incredible at coding, but also incredible at a bunch of other things. So, more and more we have like internal, Slack groups where designers will post like works in progress. And I've seen this kind of shift over the past 6 months where more and more people are posting these interactive demos. So they might send a Figma make demo. They might send like a link to a prototype. And I'll often DM folks because I didn't know that, they usually kind of code and do these kind of things. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, how did you do it? And they're like, well, I just jumped in, I gave it a go. And then, I was able to build. So I think like people, even on the kind of really non-technical side who've never, coded before, maybe they don't even have like, a GitHub account or have submitted a PR, they're kind of finding this on-ramp really great. And then folks like myself who are maybe kind of like skew more technical, it helps accelerate you even more and you're able to work across even more of the stack. And I think like one great thing which I'd encourage, folks listening to do is if you've always thought maybe like coding isn't for you or it's this kind of scary thing, like just give it a go. So my wife's non-technical, and she's been enjoying playing around with these things, building little fun websites for herself. And I think like one really, really fun thing as well is like, once you start building this stuff, it's not just kind of you prompt and then you ignore it and you just see this thing and it appears. I think like, if you're curious, then you prompt and then you're like, well, actually, let's get to know what is going on here. Let's kind of teach it like a tutoring approach, right? So it's like, okay, I built this React app. But like, what is React? Like, what are the differences between these different pages? And I think it's also this amazing on-ramp for folks who might have had in the past had to go to like a boot camp. I've done these things, maybe Matt has as well. And it's like, there's this like big on-ramp to kind of even get going in this space. But now you can kind of hop in. And then I think the key is like, how do you continuously learn and improve so that you're not just kind of, quote unquote vibe coding, but you can become, quite quickly, like pretty proficient in like proper engineering work. And that requires like, going along and having a teacher as you go.
How about you, Matt? How is this new ways of working impacting your expectations at Figma as a product team?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of answering that other question we had a minute ago. I mean, I think it's not just about. I think its design is now different. Like the way I kind of think about these tools is like it is like 100x leverage or like 1,000x leverage. That things that used to be hard are not hard anymore. And so I think that kind of changes the traditional product development process. So like one of the sayings at the moment here is like, use staging flags, don't make a demo. Kind of to Ed's point, like even the design folks here are getting in on that now too. That it's like there is this like it's almost like you're playing a game. Like the other part that I have kids, and like one of the things I actually love to do with them is like solve problems that they have with AI together. Um, and it's like a way to like have fun, but it's also like it's kind of like a game itself of like building the thing. And like I think there is this like very iterative, like that ultimately is what design is at the end of the day. It's like this iterative polish of like human perspective, like into fashioning a tool, right? Like if you like wanted to define it before software became a thing, that's like humans have been doing this for millions of years, right? We've been tool makers almost as long as we've been human. Um, it's just now like, the modern version of that is software, right? And like I think what's exciting about this is like it used to be like very small set of people could do it because it was very, very complicated to get figured out. But like not because it needed to be necessarily. It was like we just didn't have the tools to apply to the tools yet. Um, and so like I think where that falls into like modern business practices is that it just like allows us to try more things faster. Like another saying is like don't have a meeting, like just make a prototype. Because like honestly, like the number of people in a meeting and like the amount of time that's spent debating it, like some of the ideas that we debate could have just been tried. It's like, okay, was it A or B? I don't know. Let's do both. And then then we can try it and then have a like decide which one.
Any closing thoughts for all the product managers who are half scared, half excited after this demo, after this conversation? You were there probably not too long ago. So, especially if you were kind of like a product leader who's thinking, oh my God, this is not just for the junior folks. Like, I need to catch up. Like, some of these people seem to be already getting more productivity gains than me. And how can they really kind of get on board with this in a way that still honor their role and the value that they can add to the business, but like they realize that at the same time, there is a window and it's really up or out.
Yeah, there is a lot of change. I was fortunate to kind of start this journey early, like 3 years ago when GPT-4 was around. And it was incredible to see it then and the progress that we've made in that short amount of time. But I think going forward, it doesn't matter what role you have in business. Like this really can affect almost anything that you do. Like these tools allow you to do things that were never possible before. So like specifically for products, like not even getting close to development. Like I remember as like an early PM, I would love to do customer calls and like I would get feedback from sales teams and like I would spend hours just like trying to collate across like all of the notes from the field about like specific accounts of like the features they're requesting. And like to me as a early PM, like my idealized backlog would have been like prioritized based on like, account size times like frequency of requests divided by whatever. And like I never got to building that because it was like takes too many hours to do it. But like it's not that hard to build it now, which is crazy. But also like as a leader, it allows you the ability to like magnify what you can see. Like you can use these same tools to look at like kind of like the data trails that we leave behind. So like if you work in like source management systems, like you can understand like actually what branches or changes are getting merged and like rate release notes, like just your own personal set of release notes, right? And so like as a leader, you can get visibility or you can ask it questions. Like that's my other favorite thing to do is like people think it's only good for writing, but it's actually really good for asking it questions. You're like, oh, well, how does this work, right? Like as a PM, I'm like, well, actually, I need to understand exactly how this event is triggered, right, in order to understand the business implications of this decision. And previously, you had to like find somebody on your team to do that, but like now you can just use these tools. And so I guess like to anybody on the product side, whether you're early in your career or late in your career, I just would encourage curiosity and play. That there's just and I don't think we've even tapped a full potential. Like somebody once described it to me as like it's like alien technology in a movie, like an LLM crashed on Earth, and we actually don't quite know exactly how it works, and like we kind of just poke at it until we find it, and like it's not bad. Like after having worked with these things for 4 years, it's kind of how it goes. Like it's more art than science, and eventually the science will catch up. But for now, it's like play and curiosity.
That's awesome. Love it, Matt. What about you, Ed?
Yeah, I think pretty similar. I just say stay curious and like just kind of get involved. Like, with the Codex app, you can download it. It's part of your ChatGPT account. You don't need to open the terminal. It just kind of appears on your computer. You can open a folder and you can kind of start going. And yeah, I would just say like give it a go. Give it a go. Maybe kind of like work cases. Also, like on evenings, weekends, maybe there's that idea that you've just been like thinking about for a while, or you've been chatting about with your family, and you're like, could I do that now? And to Matt's point, just kind of like explore a bit and feel it out, and quite soon you'll kind of feel get to know the edges of what's possible, and kind of keep pushing, and you'll find that actually you can do kind of way more than you think. So yeah, just get stuck in and give things a go.
Yeah, a little bit less of reading and watching about AI, just a little bit more of just prompt it, and go from there.
Yeah, you can just build things. So
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being with me today and really showing us what's really possible now and demystifying that now you can really increase your time to go, like reduce your time to go from idea all the way to production.
thank you.
Thanks.